seen. So many healer people that have a brilliant light to shine in the world are afraid of really making their voice heard. And we're going to talk about that and the dynamic and maybe what's behind it. So before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to settle in and get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clear, clean, pure oxygen just flowing into your lungs, flooding your bloodstream, nourishing your organs and all your cells. And as you exhale, exhale any stress, any tension, any toxins. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light, electrifying, energizing, enlightening, and enlivening all of your molecules and electrons and connecting you with the world beyond. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress, any tension, any toxins. And now let's just press our palms gently together and softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the tingling, the tickling, that delicious sensation, and the wonderful, wonderful gift it is to be experiencing the world through this physical form. So, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you here. I'm so delighted to share this time together. It is the day before Christmas. So, we're talking about fear of being seen. And this is so interesting to me because I see it as such a common phenomena. I work with a lot of folks who are healer people, people that are teachers and seekers and coaches and people who have a big vision for the world and for what they can do create in the world as well. And one of the things that I see very common is a fear of being seen. And this is in people that really want it, really consciously desire to create a large audience and a large platform. And as strange as it may be, and I suspect you may be one of these people, there's sort of a cellular memory or something like that of being drowned or burned at the stake or stoned to death or, you know, being tortured or imprisoned or persecuted for speaking out from another lifetime, or maybe it's a human imprint, or interestingly, some people that I encounter have recallable memories of these kinds of experiences. And good morning, Irma. So glad to have you here and happy belated birthday. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful celebration and a wonderful day. We're talking about fear of being seen, and the another part of this fear of being seen dynamic is keeping ourselves small, because if we keep ourselves small, we're not rocking the boat, we're not standing out in a crowd, and if we stand out in a crowd, there's the potential of maybe putting a target on our backs. And good morning, Andrea. Welcome. It's so great to have you here. We're talking about how a lot of healer people and people that are visionaries have a fear of being killed, actually. And this includes people not just in the spiritual pursuits, but people that are doing groundbreaking work in the world, like certain medical doctors and researchers and people that are investigating and exploring and developing new alternative energy options, and or maybe not so new alternative energy options. And it's so interesting to uh, realize that there is this awareness that if we stand out too much, if we rock the boat too much, we could get disappeared. And then we use that awareness as a way to inhibit our voice and preserve our lives. And that makes sense. It makes sense on a certain level, until we start thinking about life in a grander scale and recognize that we are all going to die, and we get to choose what kind of life we want to live in, as we are alive. And I know I've mentioned this before, but years ago I had read the Carlos Castaneda books, and it's a story of a man who becomes a sorcerer's apprentice. And he called him a sorcerer, but he was the person that he was apprenticing to was a Yaqui Indian medicine man. And good morning, Dido. Great to have you here. We're talking about being visible and the fear around that, and how we inhibit ourselves from growing into and expanding and expressing our greatness in the world due to fear of death or torture or any number of other lovely outcomes. Lovely is spoken sarcastically, by the way. I'm sure you picked that up, but just for the record. Anyway, in the Carlos Castaneda books, one of the things that I recall very vividly is to use your death as your guide. And there's a certain elegant brilliance to that, I think, that if we can imagine ourselves at our deathbed, uh, or just after death, reviewing our lives and looking at the choices that we made. And if we realize, I don't want to be in the position to be looking back on my life and saying, I wish I had spoken out. I wish I had done more to make a difference. I wish I had sung my soul song. I would prefer to be looking back on my life and being able to celebrate the effort that I made, or the commitment that I had to really truly living my vision and my dream. And so when we look at our lives from that vantage point of the end of life, it can be a very powerful advisor for choices that we are faced with on a day-to-day basis. And the thing that's so interesting to me is how we will kind of sacrifice living to stay alive. It's kind of an irony, right? Like, we won't live fully because we feel like it's not safe, because we want to stay alive, but we're not really alive because we're not really fully expressing ourselves. So today's an invitation to look at this fear of being seen, and these maybe memory imprints of the cost that some people pay for being visible. Now, the thing is that there are people that get disappeared in choosing to be visible, and their legacy oftentimes helps to forward what their mission was. And I'm not saying that we should, I'm not, there's no shoulds here, other than if there were a should, it would be something on the order of singing our soul song and standing up and being heard and being seen and being visible and being intelligent about that. I This is prompted from a session that I had with someone yesterday who who has some prominence the um, in the realm of personal growth. And it was really interesting because although this person already has a substantial audience, it's nowhere near the size of the audience that they know they could have, and reason being to create positive impact in the world in a large scale. And what was fascinating was it's not due the lack of this exponential growth isn't due in any way to lack of doing the right things. Like all the things, all the boxes are checked, you know, everything is all lined up, and there's no reason that no apparent reason that their message couldn't go viral. And what is fascinating is that it was completely an inside job. And actually, all of our manifestation in the world is truly an inside job. Our outside manifestation is a reflection or a projection of what's going on inside. And it was so interesting because, and I think you might relate to this, and I certainly do. This whole idea of being perceived as woo woo. And uh, for most of my life, I experienced people talking to me about being woo woo in a denigrating way, and in a way that was dismissive and that lacked um, that challenged my credibility because I was woo woo. And this person actually had some of the same stuff going on. However, uh, they and this is so funny too, I think, because I think it's an example of universal experience, or a broader experience. um, they said that they wanted to be careful in their audience and creating their brand because they didn't want to be perceived as woo woo, because people would be, you know, would just dismiss them, and that they wanted to be able to be a bridge for people that aren't aren't yet in the woo woo fold, so to speak. And it was really really interesting because what it came down to was a a, a self judgment and having some kind of opinion around accepting the woo woo-ness that we are. When I started being able to explain that my work kind of looks like kind of woo woo work, and that that it's tapping into another dimension of awareness. And when I was able to speak that with authority, like an alignment, like to be embracing my woo woo, so to speak, um, the whole game changed. And the way in which people responded to me changed. And the the dismissiveness disappeared, and the disregard disappeared, because there was an alignment within me that was able to communicate these things with a certain authority, with a certain uh, um, alignment. And so I was congruent with being able to speak what I speak as a matter of fact, as the way that things are, without an apology or without being afraid of someone's judgment or perception. And it was remarkable and humbling for me to see that this person who was so very accomplished already was wrestling with similar demons, so to speak. And we did a session, and on the other side of the session, it was this magnificent reintegration and alignment. And I can't wait to see what they do as they transform, into, or as they really come into a greater and fuller expression of themselves. It's just really, really spectacular to watch this process and to be facilitating the process. And I just had to speak about it because I think it impacts so many of us with these memories. I would say that they're imprints even more than memories, because they're not in this life kind of memories. Maybe they're just an imprint that exists within humanity, or maybe it's from literally remembered past lives. This person happened to remember being burned at the stake more than once, which is pretty interesting. And I think that for the woo-woo people that in another era. Good morning, Sally. Welcome. Happy holidays to you. We're talking about healer people particularly, and healer people being innovators. Let's call them innovators, people that are creating innovation, that are bringing light to the world, whether it's spiritually, metaphysically, energy wise, technology wise, people that are bringing new innovations that are disruptive in some way, shape, or form, or that have a message to share. The fear around being visible and then being targeted. And in fact, I know somebody who's in the alternative energy sector who was poisoned, not killed, but poisoned. And there are so many stories of people that just disappear. So we're getting back to the idea of life, and what is life without truly living the call of your heart, even if there's some risk to it. And so Sally says, I was talking about this with a woman who just walked into our healing center. Yeah, well, isn't it interesting how prevalent this dynamic is for people? Sally says, I'm a Reiki master and teacher. That's awesome, Sally. And don't you find, I mean, I don't know how often you have this conversation, but every time I have broached this with clients or other healer people I know, or people that are doing, like I said, disruptive technology kinds of things, it is a really common story. It's a really common fear. And the question is, like, okay, I might die doing this. In fact, this is literally what came up for me when I truly took ownership of my purpose. And my experience of my purpose is to mainstream sustainability practices globally. And obviously, I'm not going to do it alone. I've spoken about this before, but that is kind of the umbrella under which my vision for an eco park is emerging, or emerged. And Sally says she's had this conversation with people a lot lately. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because I think it's time for us to rise and be seen and be heard en masse. But anyway, let's talk about this idea of dying for for what you not just believe in, but what your heart is yearning to express. So there was a moment when I was faced with a choice point in the context of a training that I was taking. And the choice point was looking at following my dream or not following my dream. And what I realized in the option about following my dream was that I could die, that I could literally get disappeared for doing it potentially. And in that moment, what I realized was that if I didn't choose my dream and if I didn't step up to it and follow it, that I wouldn't be living, that I would be existing, but I wouldn't really be living because I wouldn't be following my passion. And so what I said to myself is, I could die doing this. And what I realized was I feel dead right now, which I did. I really truly did. And so I realized that it would give me my life. And it did. And it has. And it continues to. And so it's I said, yes, yeah, I could die. And I realized that my dream was worth dying for. And then I realized that my dream was worth living for. And so I want to play with that juxtaposition because so many of us are faced with this choice to be seen. Hi, Tammy. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here. We're talking about how so many healer people have the experience of terror and fear of being killed for being visible in the world. And we're here collectively to challenge that fear and challenge ourselves to truly courageously rise into the expression of our deepest selves and our purpose. Because I truly believe that we each came here for a purpose, and it's our greatest gift and challenge to rise to the expression of our deepest dreams. And this fear of annihilation is something that so many people allow themselves to stop themselves with. And you get to decide, is it worth dying for? I guess you get to decide if it is worth dying for. And then on the other side of that is it worth living for? Is it worth, like for me, this is something, the sustainability thing and creating a world that works is very much the core of my being. And this consciousness stuff that we're working with collectively here through the core connection and through the transformational coaching work that I do, the transformational program that I have for people, that consciousness is foundational to sustainability, because we get to shift our consciousness and our awareness to recognizing that we are all connected, that humanity is not separate from nature and from the rest of the world and from other life. So that is the fundamental shift that humanity is faced with in order to move to the next level of our evolution. So Sally says, I had a hard time at first by moving out from behind the mask of who we pretend to be just to make others feel more comfortable. Oh, yes, this life is worth dying for, but it's worth living for even more. Exactly. Exactly. And I love, it's so funny. I was talking about this person that I did a session with yesterday who was coming to terms with their woo woo, like and behind that was all these notions of being dismissed and being devalued and disrespected, and so many of us have experienced that as well. And what was fascinating is that they realized that they had created this whole brand that they thought was um, quote unquote conventional in the transformational space, and that it wasn't really woo woo. And at the end of the session they realized that everybody that follows this person already knows that they're woo woo. So they realized that the only person who thought that they were keeping it a secret was them. And so it's funny that you say, Sally, moving out from behind the mask of who we pretend to be. People tend to see who we are anyway. Whether we are wearing a mask or not, oftentimes that mask is masking us from ourselves and from self-acceptance. And so good for you. I'm presuming that you've come out from behind that mask. And I like that you also said that the mask was there to make others feel more comfortable, because I think that that's a perception as well. However, when we're not authentic, when we're not really authentic, we're not making people more comfortable, really. What we're doing is we're creating an artificial barrier. We're maybe keeping them distant. I don't know that it makes them feel more comfortable. I think it keeps them separate. And the more the more I allow myself, or the more I've allowed myself to be me, the more connected my connections are, the more heartfelt my communications are, and the more authentic response I get back. And there are others that, I'm not the right flavor for them, and that's fine. It's really fine. Not everybody has to be best buddies. What we get to do is be respectful of one another, but we don't always have to resonate as besties, right? And we don't need to turn ourselves into pretzels or other configurations in order to try to make other people more comfortable. What are you doing there? You're prioritizing the well-being of others over the well-being of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself and deal with yourself respectfully, then we can't really expect others to deal with us respectfully either, right? So Sally says the mask is not comfortable to those of us who bear it, but the freedom that comes from jumping in and having faith is insurmountable. Well said, Sally. Absolutely. So really, truly, the freedom of being your authentic self is freedom. And the shackles that we live in, mostly we impose upon ourselves because we accept the constraints that other people may try to impose, or because we just self-regulate, self-monitor, self-regulate all the time. So wow, this is intense, Tammy. So Tammy says, I was told a year ago I had a year to live. The Western medicine told me go home and prepare for my death. So I came home and started to do that. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to think that way, or follow that what is my purpose. So it sounds to me, Tammy, like you made a choice. It sounds to me like you made a choice to live. And however much time we are given, and you were given the gift of being told you have a year, so you got to think about, what does that mean and how am I going to use that? And it doesn't mean that you have to buy that they were right about a year. I'm wondering how you are now. How is your health now that you've chosen to follow your purpose? And my guess is that if this is the first year of many that you have, or if it is the last year, that this year has been more meaningful to you and more filled with true life, having chosen to follow your purpose, then that has been a tremendous gift. And it's not up to Western medicine to tell us how long they give us to live. It's not, our lives are not theirs to give, right? And so we get to believe in their very crazy idea that they give you. They give you a year to live, or you can live a lifetime in a minute. You can live a lifetime in a year, and you can, who knows? I have heard so many stories of miraculous recovery that defy all notions of traditional medicine. So Tammy says, actually, the cancer hasn't progressed and the doctor is surprised. Well, congratulations, Tammy. I'm not surprised. You chose a path of purpose. You gave yourself a reason to live. And it sounds like you've been living it, really, truly engaging in life, and probably treating it as precious, which so few of us do remember to do ongoingly. You know, we spoke of this, I guess, last week probably, but talking about how so many of us experience life as a burden rather than a blessing. And we've talked about having life be a sacred pilgrimage. And so congratulations to you, Tammy. I'm so pleased for you. And the world is a better place for you to have found your purpose and to be pursuing your purpose. Even if you're still discovering it, that pursuit is a pursuit of life force. And so congratulations on that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. I hope that this has been food for thought, and I really want to thank you so much for joining me in these conversations and delving into these questions of being and life and death and everything in between. So I have so much love for you and appreciation. And I'm going to be here tomorrow for Christmas. So maybe you'll join me. Tammy says, thank you. It's hard sometimes. I imagine it is, Tammy. I think it's hard for everybody, let alone somebody who's facing a physical, life-threatening condition. And so I bet it's hard sometimes, and good for you to be presencing yourself to your purpose and to the pursuit of purpose. And Sally says, I did see it that way. Once I learned to let go of control, everything just fell into place. Have a beautiful holiday, everyone. You're welcome, Andrea. And everybody, I wish you a wonderful holiday. Like I said, I'm going to be here tomorrow too. And let's all send Tammy. Let's just take a minute. Let's just take a minute. And Tammy, let's send you some wonderful life energy and light and see you in perfect health and strength. And I see you standing strong and just a beaming smile on your face and filled with this incredible sense of vitality and purpose and clarity and peace and lots of love. So, Merry Christmas for everyone who celebrates and for everyone who doesn't celebrate. Enjoy, have a wonderful day, a merry day. Why not? Let's all enjoy that phenomenal spirit of giving and receiving and miracles and joy. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out all the awesome programming and the community on Enlightened World Network. And until next time, if you're not here with me tomorrow, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day and holiday and celebration. And may we all be present to the multitude of gifts that we receive daily. Lots of love.